Okay, test. There we go. Okay, I apologize if this stream quality may not be up to snuff as my usual ones. I am traveling and in a hotel right now, so we're going to see how well this works and how long it keeps going. Yeah, I don't remember where I left off last time. So my intent tonight, there's a couple bugs for material design in XAML I wanted to take a look at. Specifically, there is an issue with NuGet dependencies. So previously it was failing. I fixed the fail, but the version dependencies appear to still be broken. So we are going to take a crack at that to begin with, just to sort of see what is going on. And I'm going to apologize in advance. Because I'm traveling, I don't have my normal multi-monitor, so it's going to be an interesting ride. So I'm trying to figure out how to get everything set up. Let's switch over here. So here, that goes away, that goes away. Okay, so let's jump over here to GitHub, and we'll take a crack at how this is going. Apologize if I bounce back and forth to Streamlabs because I just need to confirm that things are actually set up the way that I think that they are. Okay, so first and foremost, we've got an icon update. Let's just check it real quick. It's probably something simple. For people who watched last stream, we fixed the update so that now we can actually take a look at the diffs that were inside of this file. Previously, it was one really long line. So it looks like just a couple icon additions, Let's go down to the end and just take a look at the enum changes. So addition. So not really concerned with these deletions because they're still in place, though it does look like some of the path data may be different. So there are likely visual changes on those icons. For those who have watched before, I think what I've mentioned is that right now, I'm not considering visual changes to the pack icons a breaking change, even though technically it is a visual breaking change. So just be aware of that. If you're updating that your icons, there's a chance that they will look different. Unfortunately, I'm not really interested in preserving old versions of the icons, just because that becomes a miserable nightmare to go through and deal with. Okay, so step one, we're going to just spin this guy up and create a new project. We're just going to, let's see, WPF. Sure, that sounds good. :dev. I think I have temp. Let me just make sure that I actually have that. CD :dev. Okay, dir temp. No. Great. What's in here? WPF app 1 and WPF app 2. Perfect. We will do WPF app 3. That sounds like a wonderful name for an application. So really what I'm looking to do is really just pin down how the heck to properly set up these NuGet dependencies. So I'll show you what I mean here in just a moment. So first and foremost, we are going to go out and just grab the NuGet packages that we need. So browse, material design. As you can see, I download these a couple times. And now this is the important thing to be aware of for anybody playing with NuGet and our pre-releases, is unfortunately the build numbers rolled over from 3 digits to 4 digits. And so because it doesn't, or because it's doing string comparisons on these guys, 981 is later than 1,000, etc. Right? So this is sort of the fundamental problem in that these don't work, right? With the way that it does latest version. So latest, according to NuGet, is not actually the latest. There's a bunch of ways to go about fixing this. Unfortunately, because these things have been pushed out already, the simplest fix is to simply just push out the next release, and then the problem goes away. So unfortunately, this guy's going to show us an update until we get around to addressing it. So the key thing here is I think that worked, didn't it? So let's jump back over here. Let's see, material design, apps. Let's just make sure it actually works, right? Because I don't want to think too hard and tell people that it's fixed when it actually isn't. So let's actually spin some apps stuff and make sure that everything looks correct. So let's see, add the XML namespace, and let's see, apps, material design. We don't need draggables. We don't need show me the XAML. So all of these go away, and this should be all that's required. Great, fine. Okay, so now let's do something like what's in the demo app, perhaps. So on the app screen, I think we have or even on the main window, I think we have just a flyout control, don't we? Let me make that a little bigger, just to make sure that that is actually visible. So, well, here's the simple case, right? We just switch this over to a Metro window. So let's do that, right? So rather than window, this is going to become Metro window, control period, as I call it, the auto code button into Victory. Let's see, so that goes there, that goes there. Now we should have a apps window. Let's change the code behind because that's going to complain about it. The easiest thing to do is just drop the base class off of this partial declaration and let the XAML partial that gets generated control the base class. That way it gets to decide. Because our code behind really doesn't need to be smart. It just needs to call initialize component. Okay, so let's jump back over here. There's a bunch of this stuff. Sure, we'll just do all of the theming stuff. Boom, right? And then something like that, something like that. What did we set for our color themes? Deep purple and light blue. Great. Sounds like a winner. And then let's just go down here and let's grab the apps page really quick, because this is what ultimately has a bunch of the apps controls. Numeric up down isn't that interesting, isn't there? I thought we had like a checkboxes type stuff. Maybe I'm crazy. Isn't there like a checked content? Those are text boxes. These are dialogue stuff. That's not really what I'm looking for. Because apps has more controls than this, and I'm wondering, yeah, we could do like the range slider or the toggle switch. That's what I'm looking for right there. So we're just going to dump a toggle switch on our thing. Let's see, horizontal alignment, center. See, vertical alignment, center, poof, 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 and let's see if it works. Because it would be really convenient to confirm that this actually works and loads in all the proper versions of the assemblies. That looks like success. Okay, so it is fixed in the latest version, which is what we were going for. Okay, perfect. So we don't need to spend a lot of time on that. I am going to just quickly jump into Gitter, and in an effort to not expose all of my chats, just give me 1 second. I'm just going to type a quick message for those people watching the chat room to make sure that they know. Let's see. It looks like the issue is fixed if you reference version. What version did we reference? 0.1 CI. Because of how NuGet determines the latest, right? Package version, it does not register as latest, and you will need to scroll through the versions. Boom. Problem solved. Okay, so let's jump back here, fix my screen. There we go. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So this was a scroll viewer pull request. Again, I do tend to favor doing pull requests before issues, just because I feel like people who put in the effort of submitting a pull request probably are worth looking at first. Let's see, what is this? Show separators property changed. It always worries me having attached properties that have behavior associated with this. Let me turn that off real quick. So focus assist, please. Off. Okay, so it's checking for this and registering it up, and on scroll changed, it's locating this and toggling the visibility. Because of this check here. I'm wondering if we can clean this up. Let's come back to this, because this is not necessarily something that needs to get scheduled in the next release. This is something that I would like to fix in the next release. So this bug here, the multi-line text box, you can see this guy's getting cut off. Great screenshots from there to there. Let's see what the change is. Really? Property height. Just removing those. And this. So we're going to throw it in here. I do want to check this one out real quick. I'm a little surprised that those changes don't break anything else, but I could be wrong. So let's find out. 1680, I think, was the number on it. And let's jump over here now and change the demo app. And let's go and run it and see what happens. I may end up having to go through and turn off the designer in WPF. It's been, it always bothers me. So let's see, close that app. We don't need our WPF app 3. And I don't need my breakpoints. Breakpoints not needed in here. Okay, so let's go to the text and fields section. Okay, I understand. I was debugging another issue and left breakpoints littered throughout the code. Okay, so let's take a look at text fields. Okay, so this fixes that problem. And I think this one's supposed to be that way, right? Yeah, color zone mode inverted, so that one's supposed to show up as dark. That all looks correct. Okay. So simple and easy fix. Perfect. So we'll go here, review changes, approved, work, thank you for, and submit the review, and we will get this bug fixed. Let's see here. So this guy should already be linked. Let's just make sure that this guy's in the right milestone. So we're going to bring him forward, and then squash and merge, squash and merge. Great. More bugs fixed, more pull requests merged in. Okay, so this duplicate handling is scheduled to go out the door. I'm curious to look at things still remaining in the milestone now. All right. Transparency placement issue and editable combo box. Yeah. So I've not prepared a demo. Move the window so at least Eric. screenshot 1, password at least 8 characters. And then, so let's take a look at this. Actually, let's pull in the latest changes. So we're going to pull the latest on master, switch back. I no longer need this branch. You can go away, and I've got a bunch of remotes I don't really need. Let's clean up all these remotes, and perfect. Okay, so bouncing back, let's fire this up and see how many of these bugs we can squash really quick. Because I would like to go through and get this release out in the near future. Okay, so let's go back to our directions because this was written up well. So open the demo app, check. Let's just do a little docking action here. Go to the fields section. Still, yeah, the fact that that doesn't show the cursor bothers me. I'm gonna have to look at what that's doing because I sort of thought that that was similar to this, right? But something is causing it, I suspect, to be pushed too far over. Anyway, I digress. So go to the fields section, move the window so that the at least 8 characters in the helper text of the password control aligns with the normal height window of the taskbar. So this guy here. So this is being pushed down to like this, right? So something about like this. And then open the fruit combo box. And this is where I wonder about things because I don't doubt that there's a bug here, right? Because I suspect I already know sort of what the problem is. Let's move you up a little more. Move you up a little more. A little more. There's a, yeah. Yeah, there's an issue with the padding. Again, I suspect. Yeah, because you'll note this thing technically had space to expand down, but it chose not to. It went up. And I believe the issue is the padding that defaults on the pop-up control. Let's just confirm this really quick. Snoop. Because the screenshot 2, you should be seeing something roughly like screenshot 2. The pop-up is positioned incorrectly, and the so this is interesting because this is showing that the pop-up is actually positioned up here, right? So one of the fundamental problems of this, we might just need to bite it, right? Or bite this off, is that there's this positioning stuff that happens with this pop-up box, and it all boils down to doing the editable combo box, right? Because on the editable combo box, you're expected to be able to type right here, and when you can type right there, in order to do that, the way this pop-up is being done is it's generating effectively a hole right in the middle of it to show all the way through to the underlying text field, which is fine, except for that's really not what we want, right? Because unfortunately what this has repeatedly proven is that that whole position doesn't align well. And it gets even worse when you start to do pixel offsets, because it's really easy to get something that's half a pixel on or off, and you'll see bugs all over the place, very similar to this screenshot here. I think I'm going to punt on this one at least for tonight, only because I know the amount of effort that's going to go into this. So on-screen keyboard and dialogue. This one here, yeah, this is another one that I have a hunch of what's going on, and I don't know the correct fix. Combo box can't contain images. What's going on here? By adding a row definition and the height of auto. 601 and 1503. Properly. So this looks like it might just be a bug with the combo boxes template. So seems like the problem is probably around this height, right? Of if you want to put in a combo box item, and I don't know if it's necessarily an image. I'd be willing to bet an image is just an easy case to say an item with a really tall height. Let's test it. Let's test it. Let's first turn off the XAML designer because it is annoying me and I don't want to look at it. Let's see, XAML designer, turn off. Great. Oh, does that? Wait, really? I thought the XAML designer, oh, it requires a restart of Visual Studio. Like I could have sworn it required a reboot. So we're going to reboot that sucker real quick and then pop it back open. And for reference, I'm probably not going to necessarily go my whole time tonight. We'll see how I go. Actually, hold on. Mountain Dew. Problem solved, or at least one problem solved. Okay, so let's go back into here and we'll go back into our fields. And I think we're just going to test this really quick. Because I think if we, you know what, let's do this. This has bothered me for a while. The fact that this is called text fields and the output is called fields. It irks me. So, refactor, this should just be called fields. All right, let's make the demo app match what it's actually doing. Fields view model. Okay. I don't know why we have this unloaded event handler. Or this loaded event handler. Why are we doing this? So some stuff is registering up on the loaded event. Why? Loaded. Why do we have an empty event? Just going to keep cleaning this up while I'm in here because it's bothering me. Let's see, window connection. So build, and that hopefully eliminates that problem. Let's see. Unknown builder, could not find textfields.xaml. Proving grounds, what are you doing? Sort of tempted to just remove this. It hasn't been used in a very, very long time. So fix errors by deleting. Proving grounds.xaml. Proving ground.xaml. Just make that all go away. See, problems are being solved. There. We don't need two places for the same code. Okay, step one, before I get too carried away, let's just create a quick branch. Create branch here, fix, combo, actually, how about this? Fix, and then what's my issue number? Control aside, 1203. 1203, boom. we're just going to fix naming of fields in demo app. Okay, we'll just put that as a isolated unit change and then carry on. So let's make sure it runs, and then we're going to go change up. Give me back my solution explorer, please. Great. Change up the combo box. So in this case, rather than Android, let's just take like a pack icon, and we will make it huge, right? Android width, I don't know, 100, height 100. So regardless, significantly larger than the default. Oh, Mountain Dew, how I love thee. Okay, so let's come in here, back down to our fields, and then we were doing OSs. That says Android. What? iOS, Linux, Windows. Just make absolutely certain. Are you updating correctly? No. So let's just do a full rebuild real quick, because something about that is not right. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong combo box. That's why. Yep. This one down here is the one that has the color mode inverted. So probably should come up with different values so that these things don't look alike. The goal is for people to be able to actually look at this code and read it, and if I can't even get it right, how can I expect somebody else to? So it's this one here. There we go. That appears to work, right? Oh. But that appears to not work. Trying to decide if that's so. Trying to decide if this is just an issue with the theming, or if it's okay. So I assume that's the issue. The image is shown in the dropdown, but not when the item is selected. So this guy here, grid wrapper, grid row definitions with a height of auto. So let's go take a look at that. This might just fix our problem really quick. I do love it when people tell me exactly where I messed up. Hey, got a question about images. Does iOS and Android support SVG, or do you know? So Harrison, I'm going to assume that you're doing Xamarin, because if this is native, I don't have a lot of knowledge in that area, but I do a bunch of Xamarin work. There's not, well, let me be careful about this. If you're doing Xamarin Forms, I believe I don't remember whether it's a feature that's coming or a feature that they implemented, but there was talk of actually bringing in native SVG support. And I'd probably have to go and look that up. But regardless, there's a library called Skia Sharp, and there's specifically a dependent NuGet package. It's like skiasharp.svg, and that does have SVG support. So I've used that before in Xamarin apps, so Xamarin Forms, yeah. So depending on what version of Forms you're on, you might have built-in support for it. I know there was talk about adding it, and I don't recall if that was something that was coming or has already been implemented. But either way, skiasharp.svg does have support for it, and you can pull it in that way. I've built a couple of Xamarin Forms apps using it. There's Skia Sharp has a forms control where you can put a canvas in and then use the SVGs inside of there. So if you run into problems, let me know. I can probably go and find some examples where it's been done. I think actually, now that I say that, Let me look real quick. I believe I have an example using the SkiaSharp SVGs in here. It's WPF, but it at least will show you the SkiaSharp APIs. Yeah, so, and this is a little dated. Let me drop this into chat. So there's an example there, and again, it's using the, so just inside of the main window, XAML stuff, you can see how it's using the SkiaSharp APIs, and I think most of this is still pretty much the same. But if you're inside of Xamarin Forms app, this API is very similar. The only thing that really changes inside of Forms, and don't quote me on this because I'm doing this from memory, is I think there's I don't remember if it's SK Element or like SK Canvas. There's something slightly different, if I remember right, about how you position them. But you can get nice SVG support doing that. Thank you for the question, by the way. It's always nice knowing that I'm not just here talking to myself. Though I do this mostly for fun, so talking to myself sometimes can be fun. Let's see, combo box. That's what we were doing. That's what we were doing. So this guy down here, let's see, not the Visual State Manager. What did they add the row to? So they, to the grid wrapper. So this guy here. Oh. Yeah, that'll do it. I completely agree. So I think I'm going to put it below the Visual State Manager, just because I like to try and keep the Visual State Manager sort of off by itself. So row definitions, height, auto, and rebuild, relaunch, and let's see if it works. So let's see here. So this guy here, click, huzzah! Being slightly cut off by the background here, but this combo box has a whole bunch of stuff. So this is somewhat expected behavior. Cool. Well, given that I didn't have to think too hard on that, I'm going to ship it. So what's the change here? So that change I do not want. So we'll get rid of that. Stage all changes. Making sure height of selected item is respected. Boom. Commit change, and we'll push that up, and yeah, that remote, please. And then I got too many branches going. I got way too many branches going. So delete, 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 delete. Boom. Okay. So we'll go and pull request this guy. Let's see here. So it was yeah, these are the selected item guys. So compare and pull request, and we are fixing 1203. Fixes 1203. Also cleaned up the names of the text fields, user control, and the demo app. Boom. So let's see here. Put that in the milestone, compare and pull requests. We'll let the unit tests do their thing, and we'll come back to the next one. So remote desktop closing dialogs. That's right. This was another one that was very well written up. And I suspect the issue here is with the window management. In remote desktop, you don't get all of the same animation stuff. Is usually the way people will describe it. Occasionally inside of Citrix environments, you'll run into the same type of thing where a lot of the flashy animation windowy goodness is gone. The user has modes gone when they log back in, and any blocking modes that should require will complete without any user interaction. Let's see. So apparently the initialization of the Windows desktop session causes Windows to be redrawn. Not horribly surprised at that, which triggers the unloaded and then the loaded events of the dialog host. In our case, we're able to modify the load-unload behavior so that the dialog host is reopened if it was forcibly closed. Let's see here. Say current value is open. What else used? The was closed on unloading. The one thing that is missing from this sample is when this field would be set back to false, right? Like it clearly happens here, but say you unload a dialog host without triggering this event, right? This thing will just sit at true for the next one, which may or may not matter, right? If this is an instance field and this thing is unloaded, I'm wondering if we need it though, right? How often are instances unloaded and then reloaded? Change is available here again. So let's take a look at this, because the hard part here is I'm not going to be able to easily reproduce this. I don't think I can easily reproduce this. No, I don't like. I mean, I could go through the efforts of spinning a remote desktop session, but that seems like it might be overkill. Though I might do the work and then hold off merging it until I can spin a VM in Azure and give it a test. So another question is Java an absolute garbage can of a language? That depends on who you ask. My answer is I think C# is the best language out there. Well, it is definitely one of the top languages. There are other languages out there that are very good and tend to be more purpose-built. People will make very good arguments for something like Rust, for example. Java, I think it's fallen prey to its own success in some ways, in that they are very much tied to not breaking backwards compatibility, and that limits them on a lot of their features. And so you get a lot of really suboptimal implementations. Generics is one of the first ones that comes to mind, and how much of a pain it is. There's a lot of just weird idiosyncrasies with Java where it just doesn't work the way you'd expect. Yeah. Or even things like declaring the exceptions thrown from a method, right? Like that was something new and novel that Java tried, and no one after them copied it. So I think we can conclude that's not a success, but because they don't like to break stuff, it falls back. Do I like Python? So I will say I've only used it a little bit, so I don't know if I've got a great perspective. I think Python is a very reasonable language. There's a lot of people who make very good use of it. I've got some coworkers who are very good at Python and they love it. So the only part about it that kind of gets weird to me is I'm very used to my C-style languages. I like my curly braces and structuring things that way. The white space stuff is weird to me, but it's really easy to do. Like, it's really easy to get stuff going very fast and stand stuff up quickly. So, and in a lot of ways, I know even the university that I teach at, they use Python in a lot of their introduction classes. And I think it's largely due to the fact that Python's a very approachable and easy to use language. So I'll say that. Like, so do I like it? Personally, no, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad language. I think it's just I've had very little reason to use it in my development career. So, meh. But I know there's plenty of people that use it with quite a bit of success. Okay, something dialog host. Let's see. So we were looking at the loaded and unloaded callbacks, which is where we were landing on this. So close the unit test for now. Don't need you for the moment. Where is my loaded and unloaded events? Does C# have a library similar to pandas like Python has? That's a great question. I don't know what that library is. Data analysis library. Ooh. Oh, so this is a great question. So, and I believe the answer is yes, but I don't know. I'd probably have to poke around for it. So the one thing I will say is Python I know is used a lot in R&D and academia type stuff because it's got a lot of these types of libraries built around it. You'll find people that do like computer vision stuff with OpenCV really like Python because it's got a lot of nice bindings already built into it. There's a lot of people who do effectively like this data analysis stuff with Python because it's really quick and really easy to manipulate it with. If that's the type of work you're doing, Python sort of got a, they were kind of got a corner on the market almost to say, or at least they're definitely one of the top contenders because of all of these integrations that they've got. And they do tend to get nice performance out of it too because Python's underlying C core basically on top of it. As for if C# has one of these, I don't know. Well, let's just look. Because there's been plenty of, like, people love their C# and will port stuff, but and so the answer is yes, there's a C# port of it, but how good this is and what kind of feature parity it is, when I see things like this where it shows 140 downloads, I'd be a little hesitant to tell you to switch to it. But there is a lot of, and this Quora article might yield interesting stuff. There are a lot of libraries specifically because of the big data work being done in Azure that Microsoft has been doing. That there's a lot more data analytics stuff coming up. It's not necessarily always exposed directly via the language. Sometimes it comes up via like service type stuff, and so it's not necessarily the same level of control, and that may or may not work for what you're doing, right? So unfortunately, the short answer is I don't know, and I'd be hesitant to try and give an authoritative answer. Okay, here's the two methods interested. So on unloaded, I'm sort of wondering, because there's multiple ways where something can get unloaded. Usually, the unloaded event occurs because something's being removed from the visual tree. So typically, if you've got a dialog host, it's inside of a user control, maybe you throw away that view, it's going to trigger an unloaded event. And all this is doing, because this is ultimately the problem here, right, of set the current value to false. And the only reason this exists here is because the default dialog host shows the dialog inside of a pop-up, right? And a pop-up is a lightweight window. So it's basically a second window. But as the name implies, it's designed to dismiss easily, right? It doesn't have everything that a full window has. Where's my dialogues? Dialogues. Oh, boy, I am loving that, right? So if you do this, this guy here is shown inside of a pop-up. Interesting. Notice just a little weirdness in the animation there. I don't know if it's probably too subtle to notice across the stream. But this here is a pop-up control. And so the idea being that when this guy is unloaded, we want to make sure we close this. But I'm wondering if, because the whole problem with this bug that's here, right, is that line. And I'm wondering if we even need it. So, for example, because the issue here being described, right, is effectively making sure to recall is open, right, when the thing is redone. But the only reason we need to call is open and set it to true is because it was set to false over here. So I'm not 100% sure that it even needs to be closed. Okay, testing time. What I'm curious is, will the pop-up close if its dialog host is unloaded, right? So that's kind of what I want to know. And I don't actually know the answer to that. So, but I do know how to find out, which is the most important thing in here. So let's take one of these instances, right? And let's figure out how to do this. So I basically want to put this thing into a template where I can throw it away. So I don't know. Kind of don't want to think too hard. How much of this is in the code behind? A few too many things for me to just blindly throw away everything. Let's just throw away this one though, right? So I want to get rid of this, just like throw all that code away because that's not going to matter. So content presenter, or how about content control, right? The content binding current content. Boom. So I believe this guy here has a view model behind him. Let's see. A lot of people at my work just write a bunch of lines in Notepad++ and then copy and paste into a Python interpreter. As long as it works, they don't care and never look at it again. Kind of a bummer, as I wanted to learn how to make maintainable stuff. Yeah, I can understand that. I've sort of noticed that there's a common pattern around people who become really good developers and people who don't. There's usually that desire to try and make things better. They want to look at code and try to figure out, how can I improve this? It's always the people who are willing to just go, good enough, that never seem to advance. And that's probably true beyond just programming, right? I imagine that extends out to a lot of other fields as well. I'm actually planning on starting to do, I don't know if I'll do it on Twitch or if I'll just post YouTube videos, of doing code around writing maintainable code and unit testing specifically. I've had a lot of people recently ping me on wanting to know how to write testable code and what does that look like and what does that mean. So I've done a bunch of talks and whatnot, so I was going to go through and convert those back into video format and post those for people. So if you're interested, let's see, even the stream here, it'll be YouTube, KetoKaboo.com. So you'll find all of like my stream recordings and whatnot up there. And if you ever want to search them, I post the Google generated subtitles as Markdown, so that you can actually, if you're hunting through a video where I say something and you can hunt down some of the text, you can search those Markdown files and find links back to that portion of the relevant YouTube video. I got annoyed not being able to search my own videos, so I generated that. Admittedly, it's not the most user-friendly, it's not surfaced in the best way, but it was the smallest thing I could do to meet my own requirements. I was building a thing. So public object, let's see, what did I call this? Current content. That's what I want. Current content. Boom. So back with the field. And we'll do expression bodied member, and then the setter. I believe we've already got a helper that does this. That's not it. I thought we had this. What is it? There was an extension method. Show me the extension methods. Mutate verbose. This guy. Not obvious in the least, but it exists. If I get motivated, I might go through and rename it. I very much like the MVVM Lite syntax of calling this method set, but yeah. Let's see. So action property change raise. So this just needs the, let's see here. So this is going to be on property changed. Do we not have an overload that takes, actually we can just do this and throw away the, we can do that and just throw this guy away. We don't need it. It's a little wasteful, but we're just mocking this up real quick. Okay, so this guy here, so that'll do my dialog host. Let's see, button content, Kevin test. That should ensure that I don't check it in. Binding do test. Doom. And then this guy here, grid. Just put both of you guys inside of it. And that should hopefully work. Vertical alignment center, horizontal alignment center. All right, so this guy here needs another command. Public I command do test. Do test gets new. Another command implementation on do test. Boom. Void on do test. Boom. Something kind of like that. Okay, what are you squawking about? Oh. Our command implementation apparently always wants parameters. Great, that's fine. Okay, so let's see. If current content is null, we're going to set it up. Else, we're just going to null it out. See how well that works. I'm realizing there might be a small timing issue here. Let's see here. And let's see. Current content gets new dialog host. So this should trigger, let's break this guy into a local real quick. Dialog host gets boom, boom. So that should trigger the loaded event, if I'm not mistaken. And then dialog host. Let's see, show dialog, object content, new text block. Come on, go look it up. Trust me, you know it exists. And then the text property of this will be testing, right? Simple, sweet. Let's see. Async void, which is generally to be avoided, but we're going to do it anyway. You know what? We're just going to. I'm wondering if I should worry about closing it or just nulling the sucker out. You know what? We'll just null it out. Okay, let's see if it works. That being always the most critical. Okay, so something. Show me dialogues. Boom. There's the testing. The problem is I'm realizing I can't click my own button because it's underneath my own dialogue. which is problematic. So we'll just put them next to each other. So grid row definitions, right? So we'll have one row definition that'll fill the space, one row definition that'll have a height of auto, and we will just move the button down. Grid row 1. Try again. And I kind of want to go through and change this guy here. Well, let's just make sure this guy works first. And then we'll get around to making sure the rest of it goes. So there's that. Okay. So that sort of answers my question, right? Of if this guy gets unloaded, that means the pop-up gets unloaded, and setting is open to false is kind of meaningless. So let's just validate. Well, let's see this, right? So this is triggering there, closing, right? So now the question is, does it? Well, let's make sure I hit loaded, right? So there it gets loaded because we're bringing it in and creating a new instance of it. It gets added to the visual tree. There it gets unloaded, and we're toggling the is open property to false. So the next question is, if I remove this line, does the pop-up still close? Right? Because that's the kicker. Because if the pop-up handles its state for me, then I don't care about this line. Spelling counts. Let's see. So there it opens, and there it closes. So I'm questioning if I need this line, because I'm not horribly surprised that this line doesn't do anything, right? Because if this instance gets unloaded, okay, let's try one more thing. I'm curious what happens if I use only a single instance, right? So rather than instantiating a new instance every time, right? So var dialog host. Don't quit your whining. Sure, fine, whatever, right? So so let's just do this. So if I can check the current state of the dialog host. Oh, this is all kinds of broken. Okay, private dialog host spelling counts. So if dialog host, let's see, current session. Let's just check is open, right? That should be. So if it's not open, we're going to trigger a show. If it is open, we just won't do anything. So I am curious if this changes any behavior, right? Because now the pop-up isn't available for garbage collection. So before, when we nulled it out, nothing was then holding a reference to the dialog host, and it was then available to be cleaned up. But I'm curious what happens if that's not true. There it is. Goes away. It is interesting. I don't know if people are noticing, but right over on the left-hand side underneath my Solution Explorer, you'll notice that thing is, the pop-up is jumping to that side. I don't recall if that was there before or not. Now, admittedly, this is sort of a very weird dialog host setup, right? We're sort of optimizing for a use case. I'm sort of curious if I'm coming back in here again, right? Yeah, I'm going to propose that we just whack that one line. There doesn't appear to be a reason to need this. And I think that solves this bug based on the description, right? Because before they were just resetting is open back to true. I'm going to propose we just don't do that anymore, right? So let's create a branch back here, create branch, fix 1618, boom. And I think I only want the dialog host here. And I think what we can do is I think I can write a unit test on this. Dialog host tests, because we've already got tests, raise event, right? So this I think is testable. So we're gonna try this. I have been trying to be better about making sure that things that are testable in this library get unit tests as they get fixed. So what was our issue number again? 1618. Because I do believe that good testing practices are a must. Because as soon as you get a bunch of people contributing to a library, if there's nothing actually checking it and you're just keeping everybody on the honor system, it doesn't instill a lot of confidence. When dialog host is unloaded, is open remains true. And this way, if this test ever breaks in the future, so let's go back and change this, right? So we're gonna undo the change, right? We want the test to go from false to true. We want to see red and then go to green. So back up in our constructor, we saw that this is the magical way to go through and trigger the loaded event. So what we can do down here, right, is we want to effectively do dialog host is open gets true, right? We want to trigger the unloaded event, and then we want to assert, let's see, is true that the dialog host is open. So I want to see this test fail. I guess it doesn't need to be asynchronous. Let me just go void. All right, did I see another one up here that was like that? Nope. So I want to see that assert fail first, then we'll go and make the code change and verify that it then goes green. Okay, so it did in fact fail. The assertion failed. If we come over here, I remove the line of code that I believe is the fix, and we run the test again. I should see a green circle instead of a red one. Green circle. Hooray! So let's add that change in here. So we want unit test to go with it. Let's see, I think both of these changes here were just me doing my proof of concept stuff, so we're just going to discard those. Throw those away, and so all we're left with is the dialog host test. So no longer setting is open to false on unloaded. It does not appear to be needed as the pop-up will close itself. It is when it is unloaded. Mark, you're interrupting my stream. Let's see. Unloaded. Okay, so let's just check and make sure we are on our new branch. Great. Commit changes. Push. Push. And I suspect our other one is probably done. I hope. So this guy here, pull request, all checks passed, great. Squash and merge, delete the branch. Just double check that this guy is in the right milestone and he's now closed. Great, great. We are going to do one more pull request over here. Compare and pull request. Put you in the right milestone. Fixes pound 1618. Great pull request. And I think we're going to comment on there. Let's see, after some testing, it appears that we don't actually need to set is open to false on unloaded. So I have removed that line, which I believe will also fix your issue. Bum, bum, bum. Comment there. We're going to wait for the unit test to run on this guy, most definitely. Just going to refresh real quick. Okay, so .cover reports binding leaks. I vaguely remember this one. Yeah, so this comes down to a problem that occurs if you bind through an object that doesn't implement iNotify property change. So in this case here, right, we're binding through a point object to get its Y property. So floating offset is of type system.drawing.point, I believe. And we're just trying to get the Y off of it. But this ends up causing binding leaks. So I've got a link in my comment here to the docs where it actually goes through, and JetBrains has done a great job writing up what causes the leak, how to detect it, how to fix it, all of that jazz. For our purposes, in this particular case, what appears to probably be the best selection, right, is to go through and change up. So let's just go look this up. So smart hint. We're going to go, let's pull master and switch there, right? And close all documents, switch back. So where is this smart hint? Line 154. So if we go down here to themes, smart hint 154. It's these two guys here that are ultimately causing us the grief, right? Of trying to figure out how to do this. And so translate transform. I'm wondering if so what was translate transform. So yeah, so he was suggesting that rather than doing these weird double multi-binding stuff, right, which is going through the point to get to the individual properties and functionally causing us the problem, a much simpler solution. Hey, Kanawasaki Yoko, how you doing? Magnus's suggestion here, I think, is probably the better one. So just reduce it down to something much simpler. Floating hint transform converter. Let's see. Let's just take a quick look at this translate converter and see. Oh, so this is okay. So this is just for our math converter. So nothing fancy. I think we need a new converter then. Let's see. What do I think about Blazor? Oh boy. I think that I need to have a lot more time to play with it. Is it a JavaScript killer? I don't think so, not yet. Like over the last several years, there's been a lot of people who have claimed to have the next JavaScript killer. And it's never fully panned out. Like JavaScript is still the assembly language of the web, and I don't expect that to change anytime soon. Blazor's still relatively new, but it's pretty exciting, especially looking at their demos and all of the stuff that people are able to build with it. So it looks pretty slick. Yeah, so I think it is new and awesome, and I will say I am cautiously optimistic, right? I want to see it run more. I don't know if I'm quite at the place where I would go through and build a production thing in it, but I would certainly go through and demo and play with it. I'm trying to remember. They released Blazor server side only, I think, as GA, and client is still preview or soon to be released, maybe just released, something in that range. Because the client side Blazor stuff is very new. Yeah. So I think it is definitely Blazor server is released, and is client released, or is it still kind of not others yet? So yeah, I think it is cool and awesome, and I like seeing them push. I think everybody's been kind of looking for, rather than all of these libraries that just try to make JavaScript more usable and more workable, like how could we functionally change the web to be what we want it to be, right? Like we don't want just this loose transactionless model where we spend all our time building up strings and work in JavaScript. Yeah. I mean, TypeScript to some degree is like, okay, let's try and fix all of the problems with JavaScript. Let's make it strongly typed. Let's get ourselves to where we can actually reason about our code better. So I'll be excited to see where Blazor goes. I'll say that, if that's a reasonable enough answer. Multi-value converter. Apparently tonight I cannot talk and type, so that's exciting. And I'm halfway through my Mountain Dew, so I've got about a half of Mountain Dew left of time in me before I run out of caffeine and am forced to crash. It's also weird, like I'm traveling right now, and there's only an hour time difference. It's amazing how much that hour affects you. Okay, so I already forgot. What am I taking in? I'm going to be taking in a scale and a floating offset. So let's go and just double check what those properties are. I'm pretty sure I know what those are. So what do you mean you can't navigate? Sometimes, Visual Studio, sometimes you annoy me. Okay, so where is the scale host? So scale is a double. That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted. So step one, if, let's see, values dot length is 2, and let's see, values sub 0 is double scale. Because it is worth noting, when you're doing value converters, these arbitrary values that will come into you, you will get dependency, property, come on, include, unset value passed to you, specifically in the case where things just haven't been initialized yet. So you want to make sure that you always handle that case. It's very common with multi-value converters to have one binding get resolved first, and so you'll get an array where maybe you've got double in the first element, and the second element is dependency property unset value. So when writing converters, always make sure to handle both cases. And I believe the next one is going to be a drawing point, but again, I want to confirm that. So templated parent, floating scale. Oh, and this has a no content floating scale. What is that? Ooh, that's just one. Why do we have this? So I think the short version is return 1. Okay, that's a lot simpler. Let's see, floating offset. So this is inside of the smart hint. So let's go and look at the smart hint class. floating offset, floating offset. And it is a system Windows point. See, that's why we double check. Let's see, so point, and make sure you are the right one. System Windows point, floating offset. Right, so let's move you. Why am I doing this? This is why we can dock our windows, right? So that we can do this kind of stuff. This is how it's supposed to be. Let's see here. So this down here, this guy. So this is effectively what we want to build up. So in the case where we have this var translate transform gets new translate transform, all right, because we're going to build one of these guys. I think doesn't I don't think one is what we want to return, right? Translate transform. Don't you have like a identity? That's what we want to return in the else case. Because effectively, if any of these aren't set, we just want to fall back and use the other one. So if this is the case, we need to duplicate what we were previously doing in a bunch of bindings. So the X portion gets scale times the floating offset X, and then Y gets scale times floating offset Y. Just like that, right? Simple, easy, straightforward. Easily, oh, is this a, okay. Great, so this guy down here, well, let's just take one of these multi-bindings and we'll tweak it, right? Let's see, we don't want it to be translate transform, we want it inside the transform group. And we need to include this converter first, but let's do scale, floating offset, and come back up here. And this guy, I think we're just going to repurpose him, right? So we're just going to do this, we're going to do this, operation no longer makes sense. Get rid of that, and I kind of want to get rid of this too, because I think we're about to obsolete it. If I end up needing, hold up, I'm just noticing I got two transforms here. This one and this one. So I can't obsolete that one yet. Okay, that's fine. We'll leave it. I'll leave it alone. And then this guy gets here, floating transform, and then this whole guy goes away. Translate transform. Boom. So first of all, let's just go through and make sure that all of our stuff works. All right, and then we'll write some tests over this, but I think it's fairly straightforward. So let's see, just thinking, if we use Blazor server as GUI instead of WPF forms, yeah, I think that's really the end goal of what people would love to get to, right? Is they'd love to effectively have an app that they could host on their web server and have, from all perspectives, have it feel like a normal Windows app and have it flow through the web. I mean, that was the goal with Silverlight, right? And I think that's why some people are really hesitant on Blazor, is they see it as almost Silverlight v2. I don't think that's fully accurate. There's been a bunch that's changed since Silverlight was out there, most notably WebAssembly, which I think sort of changes the playing field in a really good way. Let's see. let's see, multi-binding cannot be, duh. I don't think we actually need the transform group anymore though, right? We're just gonna bind straight in. So so I think that's part of why I think a lot of people are, I think probably in the same boat as me, where it's a little more hesitant on Blazor, because like, yeah, we've seen this tried before, but the playing field's different this time, right? Like there's a lot more stuff that's made the web a lot better than when Silverlight was just trying to effectively be an abstraction over it. And even to some degree, like the old ASP.NET web form stuff tried to do kind of the same thing, where it was like, oh, we're going to handle state for you and we'll persist it. And yeah, it didn't quite work. Right? It ended up being, that's not the solution people need. Okay, so looking to test, so like the smart hint would be the name here, floating hint there, floating password. There's a large font, which is fine. So that works well for the scale. So I believe this is all well and good. These ones here are actually the ones I would expect to be the most problematic, right? Because their positioning has to land right on top of the group box border for it to look right. And I guess this is not a group box border, this is a text box border. Because that is the style. That style. Material design, outline, text field, text box. Great. So I think this is fine. I mean, it would be good to go through and actually validate the memory leak. But I think what I'm more interested in doing right now is actually writing a unit test on this. So specifically the floating hint converter. We didn't obsolete anything we can remove, so let's try this. And more importantly, do we have, I don't know if I can, new folders. The thing that I'm noticing is this guy is marked as internal, right? And so that leaves me only two reasonable choices, I guess, right? So unit test class can be public. Let's see, and I think we need STA fact because we're instantiating UI objects. Public void. I think I actually want theory. STA for when you can't spell. When there's not set, it returns identity. Wow, typing is really, really hard tonight. Okay, so this guy here, inline data, we're going to give it basically two options, right? So object scale, object offset, right? So I basically want to be able to inject a couple things here. So for example, if both values are null, that's an easy case. Let's see, unused parameter scale, yeah, sure. So var converter gets new, that thing. And here's where I think we run into our first problem, right? Is because this guy's internal, I have no way of looking at it. So two options. I make the converter public. That's one. And I'm trying to decide if that's the right option. And it probably is. The only thing with making this public is now it's part of my public API. And if I want to change this, it's a breaking change to people. Whereas if I keep it internal, then I don't have to worry about it. And we actually have a bunch of converters that are internal. The problem is to leave it internal means that I have to effectively go through and do something fancy with my attributes, right? And do something like assembly internals visible to, and then material design themes.wpf.test, right? So this now lets me, in my unit test project, access things that are flagged as internal as though they were public. I'm trying to decide if I actually even like this, right? Like internals visible to is usually a code smell because it means that your abstraction level is wrong and you're effectively testing internals of your library. The problem is, in this case, this is a WPF theming library, and most of the stuff isn't very testable anyway because we rely on the WPF framework. So I think I do that, right? Let's see if this guy gets built, because I have to compile him so that that attribute's in it. And then I think this works. So I think now we just boom. Now the using statement's there, and we can get access to them. I'm just torn on whether that's actually the right answer. So result gets, and not converters, converter, right? I can spell converter, convert, new, so scale, offset, let's see, target type is going to be type of transform. I think what I'm going to do is private static object convert actually, you know what? Let's do this. So I'm a big fan of unit tests, and I'm a huge fan. If things are hard to test, it means you probably need to spend more time working on your unit test. So I believe that my unit test project should be as nice as the production code, if not nicer, because it's what is effectively being used to check all of the stuff. So I think what we're going to do is invoking these convert methods is a pain in the neck, mostly because you have to provide all these extra parameters, and that's hard, right? Like depending on the converter type, knowing all of these things isn't necessarily simple. You have to pass in, you have to know about parameters, and you have to handle culture info, and make sure that you get that correct. Current UI culture, right? I'm wondering about just doing an extension method on value converter that just simplifies all of this, right? The problem is both of these would have to be specified, because it really only saves me a couple, whatever. We'll just leave it like this for now. But I am keeping that in the back of my mind. So assert equal, and doing too much MS test, transform dot identity. And I'm kind of curious, those two things should be the same, right? Yep, decompile. Show me what this looks like. So this is a static instance, so it will be the same instance in all cases. Great. So I don't care whether this does reference equality or not. It should work. So we're gonna test it with, let's see, scale. We can do it like that, right? We can then come over here and do offset, which is a, what do we say? It's a point. System Windows point. This is going to be, so system Windows point, but I can't do, doesn't have, it's not going to let me just do, I wonder, will you let me get away with default of point? Because point is a struct, right? Yeah, point is a struct, because it's going in an attribute. Okay, fine then, fine. So let's see here. So rather than inline data, we can do member data. Yeah, so member name, well, let's just write it, right? So public static enumerable of object array. So effectively, each return from this guy is going to give us an invocation. So each element in the enumerable is going to invoke this method as part of the unit test. And then this object array needs to correlate to the number of parameters here. So it's going to be a multidimensional, effectively a 2D array. So let's see, invalid parameters. All right, we're just going to do this. And I think I can get away with this. All right, can I get away with? Or do I have to do that? Let's see, new array initializers can be only used in oh, so this needs to be that, right? New object, boom, so that I can infer the type. New object, so we're going to do a double and then a null, all right? Boom, boom, boom. So let's just do this, copy. And then this one here will become new point. So the advantage of doing this is now I can control what's going through here. So we'll do dependency object, dependency property, unset value, and new point. Basically every possible case that I think might actually matter here, right? And I guess we were going to need to switch to this anyway in order to get this to work. So, and then this becomes a name of operation, boom. All right, and so now if I run this, I expect to see a whole bunch of test runs, for each of these. So quick and easy way to do a bunch of tests. Boom. So if we look at this guy, we'll see this here. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 tests pass. Great. Excellent. If you're using MS Test and you do the equivalent of this, you'll actually see a 6th element. They have a top level thing, and then one for each of the individual passing ones. So to each his own. Let's see. So STA, we don't need a theory anymore. We need a fact. Right? The big difference between whether this thing's going to be data driven or not. So when parameters are specified, it returns scale transform. Boom. Right? So we are going to do this guy here. And actually, let's do some inline data. Right? Because we can go through and effectively change this out. So inline data. And I think what we're going to do is take in 3 parameters here, right? So we'll do a double for the scale, double x, and double y, and we'll just instantiate the point here, right? So rather than taking an offset, we'll do new point x and y. So then our data needs to be something like this is 2, and my x is 3. And my y is 4. What do I expect back, right? So this guy here, what do you squawk? Oh, you can't infer the array type because the 2 parameters are different types. We need some space, more hiding, right? Okay, so this goes in, this comes out, we get a results. I'm going to explicitly cast this, right? So because I want this thing to blow up if it fails. So then I expect that result dot scale x to be scale times x, right? And then I want to do the same thing for y. No, that is not what I expect, because it is the translate transform, not the scale transform. So I expect the x. I was going to say there's too many properties on this thing. Okay, so the x and y should be appropriately set, just for paranoia's sake, and to make sure we don't hard code anything. We're going to do like 1.5. I'm intentionally picking values here that aren't going to cause weird double overflows, though because both of these are doing the same math, they should be equal in all cases, right? So I'm trying to keep the numbers easy, but just enough to make sure that this thing isn't, hard coded to always do the same exact thing. Make sure it's actually doing some level of math. Poof. Okay, so that covers that. That covers that. We didn't technically test the length equal to 2, but it would be really, really, really hard to have anything else happen, right? Because both of our tests are effectively always passing in 2 elements. So I'm a little less concerned about that. There's always a value trade-off of how many tests do you write, and I don't think that's a very valuable one. So it's more important that we actually have some level of test. So let's take a look at this. So we've got the assembly info changes, so white space, compiler service, which is needed for the internals visible to, which we added, new converter, which we marked as internal, so it's not part of my public API yet. We whacked the math converter, put in our new converter, and then got rid of all of these and went to a single binding, verified it worked in the UI. I am hoping to go through and get Mike Kern, who was on one of my previous videos. We did the metamorphic testing, if anybody wants to go find that YouTube video. But I'm wanting to get him back on and start building out UI tests for this library. So it would be really nice to have some level of confidence in when we go to ship out a new version of the library to make sure that it works. So unit test there, I think I want all those changes. So switching to a new converter to avoid memory leaks. Added unit tests for the converter. Enabled internals visible to support testing internal converters. All right, so there we go. Oops, I just committed that on master. That's not what we wanted. So we come down. So we come back down here and we say create a branch, fix, and we get our 1649, great. And then we just say cherry pick that commit. And go ahead and commit it. So this branch, the fix 1649 is correct, so we'll go ahead and push that up. But now my local master branch is not where I want it to be. So I'm going to switch back to it, and I'm going to just take this branch pointer and reset it back here, effectively throwing away this commit. So reset this commit, hard, discard all changes, and because it was local, no harm, no foul. Okay, so let's go back here. This guy here is done. This fixes this. Squash merge. Poof, delete branch. Pull requestee over here. This guy should be closed. Great, he is. And let's put you in the right milestone. There. Fixes pound. Let's see, 1649. Pull request. Boom, boom. We're going to let that guy go, and then we will we will merge him in as soon as the unit tests validate that he is correct. So if we give this guy just a minute, sometimes the hook to trigger DevOps takes it a minute to figure out that it needs to run. There it goes. We'll just watch this guy run out the door. And I think I'm probably going to call it for tonight. So I have yet another long day tomorrow. I am probably not going, well, let me rephrase. I know I am not streaming at my usual time on Thursday. I'm going to be on a plane flying, and I just don't think the bandwidth while on an airplane is going to work. Nor do I think anybody sitting next to me would appreciate me just blabbing the whole way through the flight. So just be aware, no stream on Thursday. I was trying to do this one to make sure that the time was still invested, because I do want to make sure this library keeps moving forward, that the 3.1 release gets out the door soonish. So just be aware that that is forthcoming. Yeah, so with that, I think I'm going to sign off. Tell everybody thank you for coming and hanging out, asking questions. Love having it when people ping and chat and interact. So like I said before, I'm looking to do a sort of a series or a set of videos on testable code and unit testing, just so that when people ask me, do you have any good resources, I actually have something to point them to. So still kind of just trying to plan that out. It's probably not going to happen until summer, just due to my schedule and a bunch of other things sucking up my time right now. So, but happy coding. We'll see everybody later. Thanks for coming and hanging out.